Hello everybody, what's going on? This is Andrew, and today I am not playing Magic, but I am building another deck using some of the new cards we're getting from Kamigawa and Dynasty. This set has everything. It's got artifacts, it's got ninjas, it's got enchantments, it's got sagas. Yesterday was all about artifacts. I talked about two vehicles in particular and how they slot into two different decks. I think that those decks are fun and good and everything like that, but I wanted to take a different look today at some enchantments. So I was scrolling through the set, and I came across this cute little guy, Generous Visitor. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a counter on target creature. Okay, cool. Sometimes effects like this can be the basis for really cool synergistic enchantment decks. So what else do we have? Well, we have Kami of Transience, a 2-mana 2/2 trample. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a counter on Kami of Transience. At the beginning of each instep, if an enchantment was put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn, you may return Kami of Transience from your graveyard to your hand. That's awesome. So not only does this grow, but if they ever kill it, and enchantments also go to the battlefield, you can just pick this up again. I think that makes this card so good for big enchantment type decks. So then we've also got Lightpaw's Emperor's Voice. So this is a 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature Fox Advisor. Whenever an aura enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for an aura with mana value less than or equal to that aura, and with a different name than each aura you control, and put it on the battlefield attached to Lightpaws. Then shuffle. So this thing, if we're playing auras, which we normally do if we're playing cards like Generous Visitor or Kami of Transience, goes and gets another aura that's different than the other auras we have and puts it onto the battlefield, as long as it's the same mana cost or cheaper. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere here. We've got Jukai Naturalist, a 2-mana 2/2 lifelinker that says enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast. Always good to have cards like this. We already have Starnheim Courser, a 2-mana 2/2 flyer that does this ability, but having a cheaper copy can be really, really useful. And then we've got Communal Spirits, a 1-mana spell that says look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment or land and put it into your hand. This can be really nice. Being able to go get you a spell or a land is usually really flexible and makes cards like this playable. So keep your eye on this card if you're building with enchantments. So those are some of the new cards that jumped out at me as like, oh, okay, maybe we can do something with enchantments, maybe we can do something with auras, but what auras? What are we doing? Well, I went back and took a look at a deck I'd played some right after Kaldheim came out. It used Runeforge Champion to be the engine kind of, and it used a bunch of the runes, and obviously we can't replicate this deck. We don't have Setessan Champion, but we have Generous Visitor and Kami of Transience. We still have Runeforge Champion who can search up any of the runes. And so I think this is the direction I'd want to take this deck. So just as a reminder, Runeforge Champion has a 2-mana 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library or graveyard for a rune, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. And then Runeforge Champion says you may pay 1 rather than pay the mana cost for runes you cast. So before I get into the runes, I want to talk about this last ability. This ability works wonderfully with cards like Starnheim Courser and Jukai Naturalist. It means that you can cast your runes for free. So if you go turn 1 Generous Visitor, turn 2 Jukai Naturalist, turn 3 Runeforge Champion, go get a rune, you can play the rune right away, trigger Generous Visitor, which already triggered because you played the Jukai Naturalist, which is an enchantment. And then when the rune enters the battlefield, all runes say when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So we're drawing cards with the runes when we cast them. We're getting triggers off of our Generous Visitors, our Kamis of Transience. Even Lightpaws will trigger on a rune. So if we cast it, we search for another aura, and with a different name than each other aura we control. So as long as we have copies of some of these other runes in our deck to go get with Light Paws, like, you can see something brewing here. And when these runes enter the battlefield, we draw a card. So if Light Paws goes and searches up a rune ever and attaches it to it, it gets the ability and it draws us a card. And so I don't know if just playing a bunch of the runes is going to be good enough to make this deck work, but it seems like this is the engine that you want to focus on, or that I would want to focus on to build this deck. Other enchantment-based cards that we already have in the format that could help supplement this deck, we've got Catilda, Dawnheart Martyr. Catilda is a spirit with flying and lifelink. Her power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits or enchantments. And on the backside, Catilda's Rising Dawn says enchanted creature has flying, lifelink, protection from vampires, and gets +X, where X is the number of spirits or enchantments you control. So if you are making a very large creature by using Runeforge Champion and all of these runes, and you're playing with Jukai Naturalist, who is an enchantment itself, maybe Catilda's Rising Dawn is able to give a creature +4/+4, +5/+5, and flying and lifelink. That's a huge swing and can win a lot of games just on its own. Hallowed Haunting is a card that I forgot existed for the longest time. As long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit cleric with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of spirits you control. Okay, so this is like a weird enchantment spirit card. It's supposed to play well with some of the stuff from Kaladesh, but I think it plays well with the runes too. The runes they easily multiply, right? They draw more cards, they get more runes, it's easy to cast them. And so I think it could be easy to get to 7 enchantments and give all your creatures flying and vigilance and just play this. And if your opponent's tapped out, if they can't interact, you just get to attack with all of your big creatures and win the game. Or you play this early on, and then every rune you cast, you make a token. I don't know if this card is good enough for this, but it seems like this is exactly where this card wants to be. We've also got Season of Renewal, which is a new card that returns a creature and an enchantment from your river to your hand. Cards like this don't always end up in the main deck of decks, but as sideboard options in grindy removal heavy matchups, being able to pick 2 things up, pick up a rune and a creature, or even pick up your Jukai Naturalist, because this does not specify aura. It can be really powerful. Other things from the new set that could go into this deck, we've got Skyblessed Samurai. This basically has affinity for enchantments. Costs 1 less for enchantment you control, 4/4 flyer. Could be a great way to end the game. And then Brilliant Restoration is kind of a weird one. It costs 3 white. It's a sorcery, but it says return all artifact and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you're ever playing a long game with this deck, you get to bring back your Jukai Naturalists and all of the runes that have died along the way. And if you're playing with Skyblessed Samurai, this gets to come back, your Hallowed Hauntings get to come back, and they all enter the battlefield at the same time. It's kind of a cool effect. It's expensive, but I think one in the sideboard of this deck could be really cool. And that's all I have for this. I don't really know exactly what the rest of the deck looks like. I don't know the numbers, but having Generous Visitor and Kami of Transience that both get a similar effect when you cast enchantment spells, Light Paws, Jukai Naturalist all go in this deck, and we already have Runeforge Champion who helps cast cheap enchantments. And that's what you want if you're putting together an aggressive enchantment or any synergy deck. You need something that helps you do your thing. And Runeforge Champion and the runes help you do the thing. It helps that Rune of Sustenance and Rune of Might are 2 of the better runes. So I think some sort of white-green aggressive deck just kind of naturally fits with what this deck is doing, or what this deck would want to do. And there's a lot of other pieces you can add to this deck to make it tick, I think. So, like I said, I don't have a final 75 for you to go and try out when the set comes out tomorrow. But what I do have is ideas, and I'm going to work on some of these ideas, build a couple decks in Arena after the set comes out, and see what I can put together. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed me rambling a bit about enchantments. Yesterday was artifacts, today's enchantments. The set comes out tomorrow on Arena and on Magic Online. Tabletop release is the following week. I hope everybody has fun with the new set. I think it looks really cool. I'm excited for it. I'm going to do a couple drafts when the set first comes out, and then move into Standard and see if some of these new cards can have an impact on Standard like I hope they can. So again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you next time.